Hey everybody, it's Jason with Parallel Reality coming back with you here today with an article from MRC Newsbusters, America's Media Watchdog, from July 31st. And I always get a kick out of seeing these headlines on these articles and going, okay, I got to talk about that, even if I don't actually read the article ahead of time, which is the case right now. Because anytime I see something like this, again, it makes me just kind of roll my eyes and just kind of go, ugh. So it says, NBC hypes garbage study claiming conservatives read more fake news. Of course, because it plays into people's preconceived biases about conservatives, so naturally they're going to say it. And I did see the name of the person who was reporting on this, and we'll get to her in just a second, but let's just say she's a disinformation expert that can't seem to ever be right about anything. Funny how that works. So, article says, according to NBC News, a landmark study by 27 academic researchers, and that's in quotes, and so is landmark study, has concluded that conservatives in America are far more likely than their left-wing counterparts to consume news from untrustworthy sources. We're all supposed to take this immensely seriously, but even a cursory look at the study reveals a host of embarrassing problems with the methodology, which of course it does, because this was probably someone that did a study that said, I already want this to be my conclusion, so I'm going to make sure the data fits that. So that's usually what you see with like these far leftist studies. How far left? Well, because this lady is involved here. It says NBC's Brandy Zadrozny. And before I continue with the article, just so you know who she is, there's another dude that works for MSNBC, and she does as well. She's on there all the time. Is a dude named Ben Collins, who I remember before I joined Twitter, and I was just looking at like accounts on incognito mode. Following in quotes people. One dude on there, Stephen L. Miller, is at Red Steves, who is an excellent follow. Go follow him. He said, I believe it was him that said that, there's like this. Ben Collins is one of the 3 worst accounts on Twitter. Worst being like the ones that are just wrong about everything. And Ben Collins is one of those. And this lady is like equal with Ben Collins in terms of like what they do for a living, which is they're, again, supposed disinformation reporters that can't ever seem to get anything correct. So they're disinformation reporters that only, I guess they're doing something right. I guess if they're providing disinformation and they're disinformation reporters, technically they're doing their job. So hey, there's nothing to worry about. So what does the article actually say? So it says NBC's Brandy Zadrozny wrote on July 27th, and the emphasis was added by the author. The writer of this article. It says a landmark study of how Facebook, well, there's a problem. There's a problem with your methodology right there. It's from Facebook. So it says a landmark study of how Facebook shaped the news users saw in the run-up to the 2020 election has found the platform resulted in significant ideological segregation in regard to political news exposure, specifically with conservative users who researchers found were more walled off and encountered far more misinformation than their liberal counterparts. I find that funny because right off the bat, and I'm not someone who watches any news. I have not been on Facebook since probably early 2018, and I have zero interest in being on Facebook again. So as someone who I think is more finding stuff on my own, right off the bat I could tell you that this was wrong. And anybody with half a brain could have probably told you that this was wrong. But yeah, so I'm right off the bat, I'm like, just no. So it says how laughably convenient. Yeah, that's kind of where I was going. Is like, okay, of course, again, these people with the methodology probably already had their conclusion in mind and decided we're going to finagle with the data to make sure that it shows the conclusion that we wanted to have in the first place, which is not how science is supposed to work. So as the project included 17 academic researchers from 12 universities who were granted deep access by Facebook to aggregated data. All right, and then it says a quick correction there. There were actually 27 authors, but science.org only lists the first 10, followed by a little expandable dialog box which reads plus 17 authors. It looks like NBC's disinformation expert incorrectly took this to mean that there were 17 authors in total. Kind of ironic when you think about it. Yeah, again, like I said, she's a disinformation expert who can't ever seem to get anything right. Not cutting that out. As fortunately, she can afford to make mistakes like this. As NBC is a left-leaning outlet, it faces zero risk of being labeled untrustworthy by the researchers. I wonder what NewsGuard has rated NBC. I think the last thing Tim Pool said about MSNBC was that they're actually rated lower than like a lot of like things that you think they wouldn't be rated lower than, like Breitbart's higher than them, even though NewsGuard is a left-leaning fact-checking organization. So it says Zadrozny spent most of the piece cooing about the study's findings and the ramifications, again, because it plays into her confirmation bias, that's all it is. So, however, very little attention was paid to how exactly these researchers had determined which publications were untrustworthy. The study itself provided scant clarification, which is a very shady thing, because any study if it wants to be taken seriously, should be telling you exactly how they came up with their conclusions. It shouldn't try to be hiding anything at all. It should just be, here's how we figured out what we did. That way other people can look at it and go, okay, I agree with this, or this study is a piece of crap. Okay, so if they're not providing any sort of clarification, or if, as it says here, scant clarification, probably should take it with a grain of salt. So it says, but what little clarification it offered was rather revealing. According to the overview section, untrustworthy news sources were defined as those which published 2 or more articles rated false by Meta's third-party fact-checking program before February 16th of 2021. So again, it's Meta is Facebook's parent company. Again, I wouldn't, and I don't know who does their third-party fact-checking, but I, in all likelihood, wouldn't trust them because all fact-checking seems to be left-leaning these days. I don't even know if there's a right-leaning fact-checking site out there. So it says news stories are classified as false if the URL was rated false by Meta's third-party fact-checking program, that's abbreviated as 3PFC, as of February 15th of 2021. This measure of misinformation likely undercounts the total volume of false news circulating on the platform, but whereas specific false news stories may go undetected, for example, only a tiny amount of inventory ever makes it to the third-party fact-checking program, untrustworthy labels at the domain level, which are applied whenever a domain had 2 or more URLs rated false by the third-party fact-checking program, have better coverage and are more reliable. So it says, in other words, if Meta's fact-checkers disagreed with 2 articles published on any given news site between January 1st of 2020 and February 15th of 2021, then the researchers condemned that entire site to the untrustworthy bin. So strong was their faith in the 3PFC partners' judgment that they let the validity of their entire dataset hinge upon it. Okay, so these guys, they didn't even, what they should have done is looking at these articles and see, like, were these articles actually true that were being labeled as false? Instead, they just went, oh, we believe Meta, and we're just going to go plow forward with our study. So this is a study that should not be taken seriously. So as Meta lists the following organizations as members of its 3PFC program for the United States: AFP, Check Your Fact, FactCheck.org, Lead Stories, PolitiFact, PolitiFact is crap, Science Feedback, Reuters, Fact Check, which Reuters is crap as well, Televisa, Univision, the Associated Press, which is crap, the Dispatch, which is crap, and USA Today, which is also crap. So yeah, they're not doing very well. Says of these 11, only Check Your Fact could be considered reliably right of center, and I've never heard of them until this article right now. Says one could also make an argument for the Dispatch, though honestly not a very strong one. Yeah, I wouldn't make a strong one for them. I no. So it should be obvious just how flimsy this categorization method is, because only 2 articles needed to be flagged by any of these organizations in order for an entire news source to be untrustworthy. Even a couple of biased or misinformed fact checkers had the potential to dramatically skew the data. That's a bad sign considering how preposterous the slant is at some of these fact-checking organizations. And as Newsbusters has documented extensively, PolitiFact alone is more than stilted enough to wreck the data set. Yeah, and that was when I saw their name in there, I was like, oh boy, that's a problem. But the issues run deeper than that. Unfortunately for the authors of this study, fact checkers and the corporate media in 2020 were wedded to quite a few narratives that have since proven to be utterly false. For example, if you'd asked anyone working at 3PFC at a 3PFC member organization in December of 2020, they'd have told you that lab-originated certain disease from China was a conspiracy theory, cloth masks were effective at preventing that same disease transmission, and Hunter Biden's laptop was unauthenticated Russian disinformation. A few of them might even suspect that then President Trump was a puppet of Vladimir Putin. Of course, all of that is completely false, and we know that these days. There's how many articles discussing these topics did the fact checkers incorrectly flag as false in 2020? I'm guessing all of them. And how many of these erroneous flaggings caused researchers to improperly banish entire news sites to the naughty corner? The study did not address these issues, and in fact, there is no indication that the researchers even considered them. It says, furthermore, it's impossible to check which news sources were incorrectly labeled because the study did not name any of the news sites researchers examined. Instead, the authors provided a link to a satellite website run by the Inter-University Consortium for Political and Social Research, the ICPSR, Jesus, that's a long name, containing replication code, along with a note that stated the ICPSR will receive and vet all applications for data access. So the jaded cynic might suspect that this secret list of untrustworthy news sources was little more than a directory of every right-leaning website with a Facebook account. I would be one of those jaded cynics, I guess. So such a jaded cynic might further suspect that the authors were afraid to make their secret list public because doing so would give the game away. Correctamundo. Says this study, what am I reading? This study represents the left's latest childish attempt to prove that with data that the American right is misinformed and that therefore some authority must police what information they can access because they're authoritarians. That's why they want to police the information. God, this is distracting me. All these little things that are, see, it's like heartbeats over here. Anyway, says, but the researchers' efforts are undone in an instant by the same fundamental question which every proponent of censoring misinformation inevitably fails to answer: who gets to decide what's true and what's not? Well, apparently the government thinks that they should decide for you, which is a severe problem, because that never goes wrong. There's many academics on the left who claim to study so-called misinformation do it in the hopes of convincing the rest of us that they deserve that power. The reality is that fact-checkers funded by the Poynter Institute are no more qualified to be arbiters of truth than anyone else is, and no amount of politically motivated research will change that. Bravo! This should be like, I don't know, someone's Twitter profile like blurb, something like that, like where it says like about me. This should just be what it is. That's a fantastic quote. So I like that. So yes, 27 activists are pretending they've proven once and for all that the people who disagree with them politically are a bunch of dupes who read fake news. That tells us next to nothing about America's news ecosystem, but it does speak volumes about how thoroughly the social sciences have been infested by overt political actors. Yeah, and like I said at the very beginning and a couple of times throughout the article, that the people who did this study probably already had their conclusion in mind, and they went into doing their research going, how can we make the data fit this conclusion that we already have? That's probably what happened. And then you get jackbags like, Brandy Zadrozny right here deciding, hey, I'm going to jump on this and prove that, all the people that I don't like are wrong. Unfortunately for her, all those people that she doesn't like, that she thought were wrong, were basically proven right about everything the last few years. All the supposed conspiracy theorists, well, they have a better record than the news organizations at this point. So sorry, Brandy, you lost this time. Anyway, let me guys know what you think below. What do you think about this garbage study, as it says here? What do you think about, if you're a conservative, let me know if you think that you're misinformed, or you think that the left is more misinformed than you are. Let me know in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon.